The wind rattled the windows as icy rain lashed against the weather-beaten apartment building. Inside, David sat quietly at the kitchen table, his calloused hands wrapped around a chipped mug of lukewarm coffee. The dull yellow light overhead flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the room. It was past 10, and the streets outside were deserted except for the occasional sound of a car splashing through puddles or a distant dog barking at the storm. David had just finished putting his 6-year-old daughter, Emily, to bed. She had fallen asleep clutching her stuffed bear, a threadbare thing that had seen better days. He had read her the same book for the 3rd night in a row, his voice hoarse, eyes stinging from exhaustion. He worked 2 jobs, one early morning shift at the bakery and another late-night cleaning gig just to make ends meet. Every bill was a mountain, every meal a careful calculation. Still, he managed, somehow. For Emily. As he rose to switch off the kitchen light and head to bed, a soft knock broke the silence. 3 gentle taps, not loud or urgent, just hesitant. He froze. It was late. No one came to visit. With cautious steps, he approached the door and peered through the peephole. A young woman stood there, drenched and trembling. Rain dripped from her hair and jacket, her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she tried to keep warm. Her eyes, shadowed by fatigue, met his pleading, afraid and quietly desperate. He opened the door, just a crack. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't mean to scare you. I don't have anywhere to go tonight. Just one night, please." David hesitated. Every instinct told him to protect his daughter. He couldn't afford danger. But this woman didn't look like a threat. She looked like someone who'd been fighting a silent war for too long. Something in her expression reminded him of his wife's, the softness, the sadness. His heart ached after a long pause. He stepped aside. "You can come in," he said quietly. "It's warm in here." She stepped inside slowly, water pooling at her feet. David handed her a towel and closed the door behind her, locking it gently as Emily turned in her sleep. The apartment was quiet except for the steady ticking of the wall clock and the occasional creak of the building settling against the wind. Maya sat hunched on the edge of the couch, wrapped in the towel David had given her. Her damp clothes clung to her frame, and her fingers, still trembling, curled around the warm mug of tea in her hands like it was the last safe thing in the world. She didn't speak, and David didn't press her. He stayed nearby, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms folded across his chest, watching with guarded curiosity. "I didn't mean to scare you," Maya said finally, her voice so soft it almost disappeared into the hum of the old refrigerator. "You didn't," David replied. "Just wasn't expecting anyone at my door at midnight. I tried the shelter, but it was full. I've been walking for hours," she murmured, avoiding his eyes. David nodded slowly. He could see the exhaustion on her face, the kind that went deeper than one night in the rain. It was the kind you carried from too many nights with nowhere to go. He glanced at the closed bedroom door where Emily lay sleeping. He never took risks when it came to his daughter, but somehow tonight felt different. "She's your daughter?" Maya asked, her eyes flicking toward the hallway. "Emily," David said with a faint smile. 6, going on 16. Maya smiled briefly before looking down into her tea. "She's lucky." David raised an eyebrow. "Not sure she'd agree when I make her eat green beans." "I meant she has you," Maya said quietly. David didn't know what to say to that. It had been a long time since someone saw him just as a worker or a tired man going through the motions, but as a father trying his best. His wife had been the kind-hearted one. She'd always opened their home to others. Tonight, it was her voice in the back of his mind that told him this was the right thing. Maya finished her tea, set the cup down, and leaned back into the couch slowly. Her eyes were heavy, but she looked more at peace than she probably had in weeks. David turned off the kitchen light, leaving a warm lamp on near the couch, and walked toward his room. "If you need anything, just knock," he said. For the first time in a long while, Maya slept through the night. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world outside washed clean under a pale gray sky. A soft beam of light filtered through the thin curtains and landed on Maya's face as she stirred on the couch. For a moment, she forgot where she was until she smelled pancakes. Cooking, real pancakes. She sat up slowly, adjusting the blanket that had slipped to the floor. Her soaked clothes from the night before were hanging over a chair near the heater, dry now, neatly placed. It made her chest tighten. From the kitchen came the sound of soft giggles, Emily's laughter. Maya stepped into the kitchen doorway and paused. David was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Emily sat at the table, clapping with delight. She looked up and saw Maya. "She's awake," the little girl chirped. "Look, Daddy." She's awake. David turned with a faint smile. Morning, hope you're hungry. Maya blinked, almost forgetting how to respond. I didn't expect breakfast. Neither did we, he replied, setting a plate on the table. Emily insisted. Maya sat cautiously, unsure if it was okay to relax, but Emily was already handing her a fork, pointing proudly at the strange shapes on her plate. This one's a star, and that one's a bunny. I helped. Maya couldn't help but smile. They're perfect. As they ate, the stiffness faded. Maya shared a little about herself, how she had once been a nurse, how she'd taken care of others for years. But after a terrible car accident and a long recovery, she lost her job, then her apartment. With medical bills piling up and no family to fall back on, she found herself on the streets just 2 months ago. I never thought it could happen to me, she said, eyes lowered. But it did. David listened, quietly. He didn't offer pity, just understanding, the kind that only comes from someone who knows what it's like to feel helpless, to carry the weight of a child's world on your shoulders without letting them see you crack. Emily suddenly reached out and patted Maya's hand. You can stay with us, you make breakfast happy. Maya laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't felt in a long time, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. As the morning stretched into early afternoon, David found himself making a decision that surprised even him. After clearing the dishes, he quietly pulled out his phone and made a call to a friend who worked at a community health clinic downtown. They'd been short-staffed for months, and David remembered his friend once mentioning they needed part-time help. Evan, just someone at the front desk. He glanced over at Maya, who was helping Emily color at the coffee table, both of them laughing softly. It felt unreal how quickly the apartment had gone from quiet to alive. When David hung up, he walked over and sat down. They're looking for someone at the clinic, he said, directing the words gently toward Maya. It's not a lot of hours, but it's a start. I told them I know someone who's smart, dependable, and needs a break. Maya blinked, her fingers pausing on the crayon she held. You told them about me? He nodded. Only if you wanted. For a long moment, she didn't say anything, then her eyes filled not with sadness, but something deeper. Gratitude, disbelief, hope. She shook her head, as if trying to process what it meant to have someone believe in her after so long. No one's gone out of their way for me like that in years, she whispered. Why would you? David looked at Emily, who had moved on to drawing stick figures of all three of them holding hands. Because someone once did the same for me, he said. That afternoon, he took Maya to the clinic. She filled out a simple form, spoke with the director, and walked out with the promise of a trial shift starting next week. She was quiet in the car ride back, but her hands trembled in her lap, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar feeling of stability just within reach. Back at the apartment, Maya began gathering her things, insisting she couldn't intrude another night. But as she reached for her coat, Emily ran over and wrapped her arms around her legs. You can't go yet. It's not tomorrow yet. David met Maya's eyes. You're not intruding. Stay as long as you need. There was a pause, then, slowly, Maya set her bag down. Spring arrived quietly, melting the last traces of winter from the city's sidewalks. The apartment was no longer just a shelter from the cold. It had become a home filled with new routines and quiet joys. Maya had settled into her job at the clinic, often coming home with stories that made Emily laugh or made David pause with quiet pride. They celebrated small things together, Emily's spelling test victories, Maya's first paycheck, David's early evenings off from work. Life was still far from perfect, but it no longer felt like a constant fight for survival. One Friday evening, as golden sunlight poured through the window, Maya cooked dinner while Emily sat at the table drawing pictures. David walked in with takeout dessert as a surprise, something he hadn't done in years. They laughed about it, and Emily cheered like it was a holiday. After dinner, Maya cleaned the dishes while humming softly, a tune David vaguely recognized. It reminded him of the peace he hadn't felt since before his wife passed away. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed and the apartment had quieted, David stepped onto the small balcony where Maya stood, looking out at the city lights. He handed her a cup of warm tea, and they stood side by side in silence, the way people do when words aren't needed. You saved me, she said quietly, without turning to look at him. David shook his head. No, you saved yourself. I just opened the door. Maya glanced at him, her eyes shining not with tears, but with something steadier, gratitude, trust, and something unspoken. You gave me a chance when no one else did. David met her gaze. You gave me something too. Emily hasn't laughed like that in a long time, neither have I. In that quiet moment, something shifted. They weren't just two people sharing a space anymore. They were a team, a family, built not by blood but by choice. And that choice, made on a cold, rainy night, had changed everything. As they stood there, side by side, the city buzzing gently below them, they both understood something they hadn't before. Sometimes the greatest miracles don't come in grand gestures, but in small acts of kindness that grow into something life-changing. Love hadn't knocked on the door that night, but something better had. A second chance,